Hello and welcome back to In the Pocket Across the Pond, the UK-based NFL fantasy football podcast with me, the best Alex of the show, Alex Brindle. We've got Alex number 2, Alex Sharples, and Lewis Brindle as usual.
Who's also Alex number 2.
Who's also Alex number 2, yeah. You're ruining the intro, mate. Just up top, if you want to get in touch with us, in the pocket across the pond at gmail.com. Shoot us a question, tell us we don't know what we're on about, call us idiots, or say that we're really helpful. That would be nice as well. But anyway, this week we'll break down what we saw in week 2. Some talking points in terms of players that we're worried about, who to trade for, or players who you want to trade off your team. Believe me, there are a lot of them this week. Of course, we'll suggest some players for you to pick up off the waiver wire, as well as giving you our Forget About It's players that are locked into your lineup and our player picks for this week, before delving in to our first mailbag question of the season. A lot to talk about. Let's get into it.
Listen, I just want to know what your favourite meme of the weekend was.
Favourite meme?
There's a few now. I've got three. Number 1, Arthur Smith, moment of panic.
Oh yeah,
did we see that? Did we see?
You mean Barney Gumble?
Barney Gumble, moment of panic. So it's like 4th and 2 or something near the end of the game, and they go for it on 4th down. But he has a moment where he puts his hands to his head and looks through the line, and then relax for a minute, and then Bijan Robinson makes an amazing play to sort of get the yardage, jukes a couple of guys. So there's that. There's the.
I like to think maybe he meant to buy milk on the way to the game, but all the shops are closed when the game finishes, and he just remembered for a second.
He was like, oh.
Yeah, and then realised where he was.
Yeah. There's the Mike McDaniel sprinting away from the cameras at halftime after his halftime interview.
He's absolute gold.
That was really good. Or, which I think has got to be the move of the week, is the referee. I'm talking to America here. To Geno Smith.
I mean, that one was mint, but I can't believe you've not mentioned Bill Belichick throwing the red flag like a
Billy
child.
Belichick spiking, yeah.
Yeah, Belichick throws those flags like our little niece just throws her toys about, literally.
Yeah, that was great. My favourite is the ref. Excuse me, I'm talking to America here. That is an all-time quote. But it says something that we are talking about memes rather than fantasy performances this week.
You say that, though, and it did, watching Red Zone particularly, it felt like another really slow, rusty week of football. And then you see just how many points, particularly at the wide receiver and quarterback positions, just how many fantasy points were scored this week.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that they were all scored by players who no one was playing.
I think it was very, from what I've seen of the leagues I've been in, it's very haves and have-nots this week. It was either you got like 140 plus or you were on the 100 mark. There didn't seem to be any sort of in-between. So just sort of, look at the draw. Well, not look at the draw, but it's not like it was a massive week for everyone. It's just some people, when they hit, they really hit.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of the games, I'm just going to run through some scores, and lads, when I'm finished, just start talking about some games that we want to talk about a bit. So we had the Vikings 28-30 for Eagles. Interesting one on Thursday night. I feel like this is just... the Vikings, last season's catching up to them a bit. I think this is probably a game last season that they end up somehow winning. Don't think so this season. Ravens 27-24 Bengals. We'll talk about the Bengals, I'm sure, in a minute. Seahawks 37-31 Lions. Chiefs 17-9 Jags. Packers 24-25 Falcons. We had the Bills back on track for a win. The Chargers lost again. Brandon Staley, his seat is on fire. He's not in the hot seat. His seat is on fire.
It's charred.
Yeah,
he's on the charged throne.
Yeah. We had the Rams still looking competitive in the loss of the 49ers. Giants come back, well done against the worst team in the league. Congratulations, Giants, you're still awful.
Yeah, no, the Giants thing, right? The Giants thing annoys me because everyone is like going, "Whoa, look at that comeback!" I'm not impressed. Right, they didn't score a point in over 6 quarters of football. I'm not going to throw them a party because finally, after over 90 minutes of playing the game, they managed to do the one thing that an NFL offense is trying to do: put points on the board. And ain't impressive.
I would say the same about. Go on.
I was going to say, I have a little confession. I rang them up at halftime and I said, "Look, boys, I've said the Cardinals are going to go 0-17. You're ruining it for me already. Can we, turn the screw a bit?" And they were like, "Yeah, go on then."
And that gave them the juice that they needed.
Yeah. I think the same about the Commanders. Patriots keeping things close.
I feel that's going to be the Patriots all year. The Patriots are going to have a bad record, but they'll have kept things close. It's Bill Belichick, so they're going to lose respectfully. They're going to have a lot of gentleman losses, like losing by 1 score or something like that. They're going to play you hard.
He ain't going to throw that flag like a gentleman, though.
No. He's going to get it out of that
horrible
Chris White sock
sock
that's pulled. We've gone opposite there. It's pulled up well above his shin. Yeah. What do you think? Do you think your men keep him in your sock? What do you think?
It can't be the quickest place. You need it on the hip. Like
some people keep it like in the hip, but I noticed Belichick
like a quick draw.
Belichick always keeps it in his sock. It might be like a superstitious thing,
probably
but
is.
I would just pocket. Yeah, I'd have it back pocket.
I think I'd have it in some kind of like a tube of Pringles, and then you could really like uncork it and draw it like a sword. That's what I'd be doing with it.
Yeah. I would have it on a drone.
Mm-hmm.
That is constantly flying above the stadium, or in the stadium if it's indoors, and then I'd drop it from that height. You'd have to time it really well, otherwise they'd be like, you'd be like, "I'm challenging this," and they'd be like, "Where's the flag?" And you'd just be like, "It's coming, it's coming."
And how about them is all I'm going to say for now. How about them? But now we've run through some of the scores, some games that you really just briefly want to touch on. Let's go back to the Chargers and Brandon Staley, Lou. I think the guy is seriously on the hot seat. There's receipts from the podcast this time last year where I was saying Brandon Staley was on the hot seat and he's not as good a coach as people say he is. But the Chargers with the loss against the Titans. And while we're on the Titans, I'm just going to slip in here, head into the booth.
Oh, head into the booth section.
Head into the booth. I'm just going to slip it in, the news section of the podcast where we give you the player we think is most likely to be in the commentary booth this time next season. You might think I'm sticking with Ryan Tannehill because I'm going with the Titans, but I'm going for Old Man Hopkins. I'm an old man.
Mm-hmm.
Old Man Hopkins running routes. How old is he?
31.
DeAndre Hopkins,
31.
He's 31. Old Man Hopkins. Yeah.
Old Man Hopkins.
I'm going with DeAndre Hopkins for heading to the booth. Heading for the booth.
Heading to the booth, DeAndre Hopkins.
Sorry, I know. And maybe it's because I was watching the game and I had Tannehill in mind, and then Ryan Tannehill actually inexplicably made some plays this week, and DeAndre Hopkins just looked totally out of it. He looked old. I'm sorry. I know it's ridiculous to say because he's 31, but that's what this segment's about. And you look at Matt Ryan last year, who's the prototype, the perfect example for what this segment is. Hopkins looks super old.
NFL players age like dogs when they're in the league. Like every year is basically like 4 years. It's like, so if he's 31, it's like, wow.
I can run this route for you. Yeah. That's my Old Man Hopkins impression.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't look great to me. And back to the original point, I suppose, we're like cloning on the Titans and all the players looking really old. But the point being...
Can we do our head into the booth?
The charge, it's my segment.
All right. Do we not get a say of our own?
If you must. It's not going to be Old Man Hopkins.
It's not going to be Old Man Hopkins. My heading to the booth is that ref who said that thing, because some network's going to pick him up and then make that his segment. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, you're talking to America, explain that stupid decision by these refs.
Yeah, they're going to make a meme out of it.
They will make a, yeah.
Chapels,
what's yours? Because this is a segment for all of us.
Okay.
Oh, it's me, because I'm 0-2 and I hate fantasy football now.
Heading to but heading to the booth is like you're on the field, and no one would get you for the expertise right now. In fantasy football, in our position, heading to the booth is almost opposite of what it means for the players. We have to be really good to head to the booth. The players have to be really crap.
Okay, well,
so you're taking after, you two are taking after the players right now and being really bad at fantasy football.
Okay, I'm going to head into the landfill then. It's me.
Head into the landfill. Right.
Anyway, the Chargers shouldn't be losing against the Titans. Realistically.
No, and the thing with the Chargers is like, as you're saying, this goes back to last season. It's like, right. So let's talk about some of the games. This past week, Titans 27, Chargers 24, Dolphins 36, Chargers 34. Last game of last season, Broncos 31, Chargers 28. They won a couple before that, but these games that they're losing, the one-score games. Now, that is where coaching does come into play a lot of the time as well, to get down the field, game-winning drives. And this is what these guys aren't doing. It's been a consistent problem since Staley's been there. They've been stale. Brandon Stale, he's gone. He's gone because this team, this team just can't do it when it matters. And you could put some of that on Justin Herbert. I personally think that also, like, for as long as Herbert's been there, that defense has been pretty bad. Like, Herbert's putting up points for the team, and you need your defense to also do a job for you as well, and that's not happening. But yeah, I think the Chargers have a long, long way to go to be anything like what people always want them to be every off-season going into the season, and this past two games has sort of exemplified that, yeah, they're still the Chargers of the last couple of years, really.
Sharples, any games stand out to you?
Well, I just wanted to highlight, the Chiefs now, obviously, they beat the Jags, but, 17 points this game, 20 points last game. I know Travis Kelce wasn't there in the first game. Is there anything to be worried about this Chiefs offense? I don't recall them seeing going back-to-back this few points in a while, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a similar thing with the Bengals to me, where week one for both the Chiefs and the Bengals, you go, that was weird, but let's write it off because it was just weird. And then another week goes by where the Chiefs aren't firing on all cylinders, and neither are the Bengals. Neither were the Jags, but we saw the Jags play really well in week one. Yeah, another one where it's a bit like, okay, that was weird again, but it's fine. But, you're a bit... I'm a bit worried about how the Bengals look, because I think Shannon Sharp said something this week about Joe Burrow if he really did aggravate this calf injury. When have you ever heard of anyone get healthier through the season?
Yeah.
They're playing games every single week, so that's a worrying thing there. I'm still buying low on all the Bengals players if you can get them in your league. I'm still buying low on Mahomes, on Kelce as well. But, yeah, doesn't seem to be clicking for either team. And if it's the same again next week, then maybe we do start raising some eyebrows, asking some questions. But
the Bengals did start 0-2 last year.
Yeah, okay. But I feel like they didn't look this bad.
They might have done. I can't really remember. We could have been recalling this exact same conversation.
Maybe someone go and listen to it and let us know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Re-listenability.
Yeah.
Podcast.
Lou, I see you've got something there about the Broncos, which I just fundamentally disagree with, and I'm sure during our play pick segment I'll tell you why. But Broncos in trouble. You've got.
I put Broncos in trouble still. Is it Wilson? ? Because
let's ride. No.
I know he had the Hail Mary. the Russell Wilson moonball has returned. this Commanders team looks pretty bad, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And the Broncos sort of matched them in badness. Like, I know both teams scored quite a bit of points, but I don't know. I know Russell Wilson doesn't seem to be as sort of goofy as he was last year, goofy in play style and stuff like that, and the subway adverts and stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know. Losing this game is just, I feel like this is a game you should be winning because, like, you know, we'll talk about it in one of our little segments in a bit, but I don't think this Commanders team is anything. No, and if this Broncos team wants to be something, you got to be beating teams like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
But is it Wilson? What do you think?
I think that it was an incredibly traumatic in terms of the kind of unpreparedness and the shifting culture. It was a traumatic time for the team in terms of the team building and how they play, and just how fundamentally from the roots it was a bad program last year, and it's going to take a lot more than one off season and Sean Payton and a quarterback that's completely lacking in any sort of magic ability that he had in his previous 10 years in the league. It's going to take a lot more than 2 weeks to sort that out. It was a team that was just rotten to the core last year in terms of how they were playing. It was a bit, I liken it to the Manchester United of NFL.
I don't even have a comeback to that. He's spot on.
But
yeah, but you know what I mean. It's just like
less. But Broncos are much less crap.
Yeah.
But
you know what I mean? Stuff like that lingers. Especially you're dealing with the same group of players. Stuff like that lingers from year to year, and you can try all you want getting rid of Russell Wilson's office and calling out the previous regime and, you know, saying we're doing things differently now. But yeah, it's going to take... I mean, they're clearly going to give Sean Payton more than a year. I think they have to give Russell Wilson more than this year with the amount they're paying him. He's not getting any younger, admittedly, but I don't think anyone came into this season with the expectations that they had last season for the Broncos, but you'd have to. You think they're going to be really good, I suppose, or any good.
I mean, what do you think, Shackles, just briefly on the Broncos? Like,
no, I don't think so. You're very right about the Manchester United analogy. Like, I think on paper they look like they might have a decent team, but when they get on the pitch, it just doesn't work. I agree they probably can't go off Russell Wilson this year or the next just for the amount of money that they're paying him, but God, like, they need to. I think it's going to start with him. I think, and also like on paper, like it looks like they've got a decent amount of weapons. Like, we always say Cortland Sutton's going to be there, Jerry Jeudy's going to be there. Obviously, the Mims came out of nowhere to score a lot of points. It's just, but they're not. Are they good? Are they really good? Like, they didn't do it last season. Are they going to do it this? Like, do you know? I don't see where it's going to come from. I mean, the defense has got some good players. Justin Simmons is good. Patrick Surtain as well. But it wasn't enough last season. I don't think it's going to be enough this season. They need a full reset, if you ask me. Like, trade as much as you can. Just reset. Let Sean Payton do that. You know what I mean? But no.
It's fantasy points kind of taking over how good a team actually is, like you were just saying with the Commanders, Luke. I mean, great performance by, Brian Robinson this week. No way are they going to be playing like that. How many points were they down, the Commanders, at some point?
Well, no, it was the Broncos that were down, then got ahead, and then the Commanders sort of came back and it was a bit tit for tat.
Yeah. So, but my point being, they had to come back and they were in a game which was a bit of a shootout, so they had to play in a way that is just not sustainable for that team or that quarterback, I suppose, which is why I'd be maybe pumping the brakes on thinking you've just found an unbelievable gem in Brian Robinson who's going to give you that output every week.
Yeah.
I don't know, but anyway, well, let's get to our categories for the week, let's say. I just want to quickly say that I think the Cowboys and the 49ers, for as much as we've, kind of slagged off the NFC and held the AFC to be easily the best division with the best the best conference with the best teams in it, I think the Cowboys and the 49ers are the class of the NFL at the minute, lads. Any disagreements?
No, I mean, Eagles, Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, pretty underwhelming starts. Cowboys and 49ers just look dominant.
Yeah. And you kind of want to cry if you had the first overall pick in any of your drafts and you didn't take McCaffrey, because I don't think any of us expected. It's like, okay, he had all the work in Carolina, but they were on a bad team. But now he's got less work, but on a really good team, so it'll even out. No. He's on a really good team and he's got all the work. So, and he's an incredible player. We'll get to him, I'm sure. But who's your not buying it win this week, Sharples?
Do you know what? I think for the first time, my not buying it might also be my impressive win, because Giants came back from what? I mean, it was the worst. Don't get me wrong. It was the worst comeback I've ever seen, but they still did it. But it was against a team that I've still predicted to be going 0-17, and I still think they're a rubbish team. So it was impressive, but also I'm not buying it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Commanders for all the reasons that me and Lou just said.
Yeah, same. Commanders 2-0, but how?
Impressive victory. I'm going to go for the Seahawks, because that must have been super intimidating going into Detroit off the back of the win that they had. Everyone wearing like the Honolulu blue ski masks. And yeah, they went in there, they pulled off the upset. Geno Smith, again, you like to see Geno Smith kind of having this sort of game in a neutral game script, not in a game that he had to do this kind of thing, but he had to do it and he did it. Yeah, Seahawks, fair play.
Mate, don't write Geno Smith off, because he ain't going to write back. I think that caught pretty hard when he said that last year.
I don't really get how it works.
He doesn't. He doesn't need to work.
Okay.
Doesn't need to work.
Yeah. Okay.
My impressive victory is the Dallas Cowboys, because I just thought they looked
70-10. We've outscored New York teams in the first 2 weeks.
Dominant again.
New York.
Just dominant again. This is a. I know.
Viciously shaking his head.
I know. Blah blah blah. Zach Wilson. Whatever. This is a Jets team that just beat the Bills. What's that face for? This is a Jets team that just beat the Bills. They are, regardless of quarterback, they are a solid NFL team. Robert Saleh has proved that time and time again, and the Cowboys just walked all over him again. Defense was fantastic, took sort of the pressure off the offense, freed the offense up, and the offense looked good when it had to do its thing. I just think the Cowboys have looked excellent.
Sharples.
I mean, Jets are nothing without Rodgers, so I mean, it wasn't that impressive. I mean, again,
Giants,
same answer is going to be, cheap, Cardinals.
What's that? The worst team? You go in the
worst team, yeah, because Giants were both.
Yes. Yeah, sorry, of course. I'm going to join you with the Cardinals, the worst team. And if anything, it's because I just, again, like I mentioned last week, a little bit annoyed with the fan base. Oh, we wanted to lose, though. We wanted to lose. Caleb Williams. It's like, I'm sorry. So imagine, let me give you a metaphor. There's someone, and he's trying to put together an amazing outfit to look great in. And a few years ago, he won the lottery and spent his money on an amazing diamond-encrusted Rolex. This year rolls around, and there is not really anything wrong with that Rolex. It just needs to go to the shop to get a tiny little repair, but it's going to be as good as new. But he wins the lottery again, and he buys another Rolex. Well, you know what the problem is with this man? He doesn't have any pants on. You know what I mean? We need to start with the fundamentals. I don't know what them getting the number one pick and doing the same thing over again with Caleb Williams is going to do. Are you really telling me there's a higher chance of Caleb Williams coming into the NFL and being as good, as solid, as kind of at times great as an NFL quarterback as Kyler Murray is? Because those draft picks are like scratch cards. And doesn't matter how good someone is in college, you never know whether it's going to translate. And with Kyler Murray, you've got someone who it translates. You've just not surrounded him with any support. And you know what? Let them get Caleb Williams, and let's see him in this exact situation in 3 years.
Yeah. Very generous of you to use your first day back at work as the analogy as well. My worst team is the Bears because the Cardinals have played people pretty tough. I thought, Dobbs had a pretty tough run touchdown, and the Bears have just looked rubbish. The Bears have just. I thought they'd.
I just imagine Al with a Rolex on each arm but no pants on.
I think the Bears have just looked trash, even worse than the Cardinals, to be honest with you. So they're my worst team.
Some players. So at the quarterback position, basically every quarterback on the waiver wire went off. No one that anyone was playing. It's a weird week when Josh Dobbs is up there with the top quarterbacks on the week, but you had Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, Hurts, Allen, Geno, and Goff, all with good games. But lads, I've got to break something to you, and I'm sure that Sharples may quite literally echo this point in around 2 minutes' time, but Jared Goff threw an interception, and the streak is off.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but he still had a nice game for fantasy. At the running back positions, rank these. I'm asking you two this. Rank these running backs who smashed it this week on how confident you are for them for the rest of the season, starting them in your team. Brian Robinson, Kyron Williams, that's even changed since the last time I looked at this with all the Akers news being definitive now, I suppose. So Brian Robinson, Kyron Williams, DeAndre Swift, Raheem Mostert. Quickly rank those four into most to least confident rest of the season.
I would have to say Kyron Williams number one. I was against him this week. He was scary. It didn't matter what the score was. Didn't matter whether he was running or being thrown the ball. He was getting it every time. For me, unless something mad happens like Jonathan Taylor ends up at the Rams, for me, he's going to be unbelievable going on. I would then say DeAndre Swift. I still think he's going to split time with Gainwell, but as we said in our text, you can't deny that performance the other day. Then probably go Brian Robinson, because again, pretty much going to be the lead back there. Gibson's not going to do anything. Mostert, part of that four-headed monster or whatever, committee. So yeah, I'd go Williams. Who was the second one? Williams, Swift. Robinson, Mostert. Yeah, sorry about that.
Mostert, yes. Lou, it's fine.
I would go Williams first because he's on a good offense. I think most catches by a running back in the whole league through 2 weeks. It just looks like the dude there. I would go Williams. Then I would probably go Brian Robinson, just because less competition than the other guys. That's his backfield. Antonio Gibson is garbage. Then DeAndre Swift, because that performance was excellent, but he is on a team where it is going to be a committee. Jalen Hurts steals all of the goal line rushing attempts. But DeAndre Swift's a dynamic player. You've said this years on end, Al. And then Raheem Mostert, because Raheem Mostert has been playing well, but once Jeff Wilson comes back, Devin Achane gets a bit more ingrained in the offense, that's going to be a bit more of a committee. So Williams, Robinson, Swift, Mostert for me.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't playing him, which I idiot, because I always preach about how great I think DeAndre Swift is. I wasn't playing him on Thursday when he just looked like a monster. I'm not going to buy into the narrative that this is now his backfield, because clearly they want to use more guys. But how do you not look at that performance from the other day? And because they were using the hot hand, it was getting yards and yards every time he carried the ball. But he's just a different speed to other running backs. He might not be the biggest body, but the guy's he's a different speed. He moves around tackles so smoothly. when he's on, like he was the other day with his best game really of his NFL career, when he's on, there's not really any stopping DeAndre Swift, which is always annoying that kind of prospect is there and you don't often get it. But nice to see, kind of, I suppose, my opinion on him vindicated, maybe even just for a week. Other running backs with big games: Barkley, McCaffrey, White, Bijan Robinson, James Cook, Tony Pollard. I think the wide receivers are probably the most interesting ones this week, though, lads. We had Keenan Allen with a huge game and Puka Nacua. So let's chat about Puka for a second. I think we all agree that this guy's probably legit now, at least until Cooper Kupp comes back. Who are you benching to play him? I'm going to use one of my teams as an example because I think it's a really good example. It's a league where you can start multiple wide receivers. So we've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 1. That's a no. Wide receiver 2 is Jalen Waddle. That's probably still a no for now on Puka Nacua. Then we're getting down to wide receivers 3 and 4. We've got T. Higgins, big draft stock, good week, bit of a shaky start. Mike Evans, far less draft stock, but a great start. Coming into next week, are you playing Puka over, let's say, Mike Evans or T. Higgins? That sort of level, do you know, like that kind of really kind of wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3? Are we playing Puka Nacua over Higgins or Evans this week?
I think I would play him over T. Higgins. I think Mike Evans has had 2 good weeks, and the targets have been consistent with him, which is one of the main things I look for. Whereas I think with T. Higgins, obviously he could have a big week, but I still think with Higgins, there's always Jamar Chase looming over him. You definitely don't have that with Puka Nacua. He is the guy. The only person who might get it over him is Kyron Williams. So yeah, of the few you've mentioned, yeah, I think I'd play him over Higgins. But I'd ride the hot hand with Evans.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, Mike Evans has been great, and the Buccaneers, we didn't mention them before, but are playing really well. Lewis's favourite player, Baker Mayfield, is playing some really good. Even to the point where you'll see Mayfield kind of get the ball and roll out a little bit, and he'll go to throw it, and then he'll fake and kind of come back, do some more of his progressions, and then throw the ball. Last year, he throws it the first time, and it gets intercepted. So it looks like he's playing some really good football at the minute. But anyway, Lou, Nacua, I assume you think he's legit.
Yeah, he is legit. Like, you can't sort of look into what he's like. Look out and do what he has done the past couple of weeks with the targets and the receptions and the yardage. And we see this every so often, I think, like with a player for whatever reason just sort of slips through the cracks in the NFL draft and stuff. But I do think he is legit. It's a really tough question. I think I would start him over Evans because I think the Rams have a better quarterback, and the Rams are a better offense. So I feel like there's more value in Nacua while he is the one than Evans, who is the one in his offense. And I think I would also start him over Higgins because of the reasons that Sharple's outlined. Jamar Chase is going to get his, and that's going to be soon. Waddle and I'd draw the line sort of somewhere in between there, really, between those two guys, and then like a Waddle and who you're talking about.
Yeah, but really interesting. Other wide receivers scoring a lot of points. Evans, we said Higgins, Nico Collins with a really great week. Tyler Lockett, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Josh Reynolds, Devonta Smith, Deebo Samuel, Christian Kirk. Any of those players that you want to chat about, Lou or Sharps, just to these wide receivers? It was an insane week for wide receivers.
I just want a quick word on Nico Collins and like the Houston wide receiver room on the whole, because Robert Woods has had a couple of nice games, and Tank Dell also had a decent game as well. And if you look up the fantasy scoring of these three guys, it's been solid across the board, and I feel like that could be sustainable just because Stroud looks like a pretty solid pocket passer. In the couple of games that he's played, his yardage is nice, and also the game script for the Texans, just like we're talking about it being to the detriment of Dameon Pierce, they're going to have to take to the air consistently. So these guys are going to get peppered with targets every week. So I feel like Nico Collins especially is going to be a really sort of surprisingly consistent player. And then of the other two guys, I would pick up Tank Dell in being the younger guy and see if you have something there sort of towards the middle of the season. He could become a really reliable flex.
Yeah. Sharples, any players of note this week at any position?
Well, just sticking on wide receivers, CD Lamb got 25 points, which, I mean, good week. I mean, I guess modest compared to some people, but just the fact that the Cowboys were so dominant in that game and they could have just, ran the ball and he would have been in danger of not getting targets. 13 targets, 11 receptions, 143 yards. I mean, he got that without a touchdown. Very, very impressed with that. I thought the way the game script was going, he would have been left out, but no. So I mean, keep up that energy. I mean, that's wide receiver 1 territory.
Yeah. And then at tight end, TJ Hawkinson, maybe I was wrong picking him as my bust pick. Hunter Henry, Andrews, Waller, Kelsey, Engram, Ertz, Laporta, and of course the household name, Kylan Granson. Everyone knows who that is, right?
I'm sure
his
grandparents. I'm sure his grandparents do.
Good one, lads. Let's keep the busts nice and short. No one wants to.
The busts,
but yeah. I'm going to throw out 3 names: Chase, Jacobs, Najee Harris. What happened? What's happening?
The Jacobs one's really funny because I've got him on a couple of my teams, and I wasn't too bothered until I sort of looked into the numbers. He had 9.9 fantasy points in PPR, and I was like, whatever, fine, nearly 10 points, okay. He had negative rushing yardage. So I think that's really impressive to get that in points. Chase, I'm not worried about until you are worried, but that's not for a while yet. And then Najee Harris, I am a wee bit worried about, I'll be totally honest with you.
I've got a question for Sharples because I'm going to mention a player that he was really in on at the start of the season. I'm just going to say, first of all, we also had, Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, Travis Etienne, Josh Kelly, Kyle Pitts, surprise, Breece Hall, all with games that kind of killed you this week. But who are you more worried about? I know what my answer is. Najee Harris or Alexander Mattison? Sharples.
Oh, that's tough. I still think...
Can I throw in another name? Dameon Pierce.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm most worried about Dameon Pierce primarily because he's on my roster, but I'm gonna talk a bit later on about him, so I don't want to go too into that yet. But of those 3, I'm most worried about Pierce. Of the 2, I still think I'd have to say I'm more worried about Harris because Mattison, I think, is in a better situation and he's in a better offense. Also, not a great defense, but a better offense. I think he's got more scope to be catching passes. Obviously, it's not been a great first 2 weeks, but we've seen him come into that Dalvin Cook role in the exact same team and do well. I think he can do it again. With Najee Harris, for me, the Steelers are going to be chasing most games that they're in, and so they're not going to be running that much. He's not that well known as a pass catcher. So, yeah, I still think he might be a bit more consistent than Alexander Mattison, but you aren't going to get the same sort of booms that you're going to get from Mattison. So, depends what you want, but I'm still holding on for Alexander Mattison.
I just feel like Alexander Mattison doesn't look great. He doesn't look like an amazing player at the minute. And with Najee Harris, I feel like it's going to be hard going at the Steelers anyway. You're a bell cow. You're a not really high-scoring offense. You like it to be better with Harris, and I think Harris is the type of guy that you want to root for as well. Not that you don't want to root for Mattison, but it's one of those where, you maybe it's draft bias of kind of the status of the player, but with a player like Harris who was drafted in the league to be a running back 1, you're always willing to wait and see for a bit longer with him, whereas Mattison, you're more inclined to be like, oh, well, this is why he was a backup. Yeah. Really tough one. those, I suppose, we with our player picks, lads, which I'll just move into really quickly. We've not picked any of these total busts apart from Sharples this week.
First one ever.
No. In around about the middle of the season, we'll spend a bit more time and recap how we're doing at the minute on this, because it gets quite competitive. But this week, Lou had Goff, who had a nice game, but it wasn't a hit. He had
Joel. Yeah, it was.
I thought it was.
Was it not?
22.
Was it not?
It wasn't 4 points ahead of his projection, unfortunately. He was projected around 19.
Yeah.
Goff 22.9. Jamal Williams was a miss on 7 points, unfortunately. Zay Flowers looks good again, 10 points though.
Jamal Williams got injured in the second quarter, so I'm saying that's void.
Sorry,
that's void.
I'll avoid it.
I'm saying
injuries do make it void, yeah. And Dallas Goddard with an okay game for tight end. Let's ride.
No.
Long pause.
No.
Russell Wilson 25.9 fantasy points. Yes. Ramondre Stevenson 15. Really disappointed with Ramondre Stevenson's with his start to the season. I'll be honest with you. He's not scoring, few enough points to be worried about him, but I thought this was a super smash play this week and it just didn't turn out to be. Chris Olave 14.6. Chris Olave's a great player. Zach Ertz 8.7. So just one hit there for me. And Sharples, the hit on Geno, the miss with Zeke. Weird. I don't know. Maybe Sharples can enlighten us a bit more in terms of what Zeke's role's looking like in this offense now, 2 weeks in.
I mean, I'd love to enlighten you, but I can't. I mean, I thought based on last week, I mean, he obviously the rushing wasn't there, but he'd had 7 targets, 5 receptions. I was hoping for that again, and maybe a little bit of goal line work. Just didn't get it. I mean, I don't know whether Belichick saw something in the different defenses or what, but just a complete departure from what we saw in week 1. So it's gonna be a tough one to predict going forward, I think.
Yeah, but you had a nice pick with Devonta Smith for your wide receiver Sharples with the 23.1 fantasy points. Oh. However, we need a new soundbite somewhere, Lou. Okay. Hopefully before Lou edits this, he can add something in, because we've got our first goose of the season, lads. First goose pick, Troutman. Maybe Sharples is going to climb even further down the tight end depth chart at the Broncos for this week's pick. I wouldn't advise it, Sharples, but Troutman, goose, and he was on the field. I made sure to check.
Yep, he was.
One of them, tight end for you.
Yeah, I just really wanted to get into the mind of Lewis, and so I just thought I'm going to take a goose this week.
Okay, right. Well, yeah. Just give us a single point next week. That'd suffice, mate, because you're on 0 through 2 weeks.
Okay, Lou, do you want to just unfortunately run us through a bunch of injuries? I don't know about you lot, but when I woke up on Monday and Tuesday morning, my whole ESPN roster just had red Qs next to them. Lou, do you want to tell us about the injuries? Just go run through it, mate, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Well, the big one is obviously Nick Chubb. Really, really horrible knee injury against the Steelers on Monday night. Really grim. I mean, if you've seen it, you know. If you've not seen it, don't watch it. But Nick Chubb is done for the year, at least. He's every ligament, cartilage, everything gone, obliterated by the looks of it. Really, really sad sight. If you had Nick Chubb on your roster, yeah, we'll speak about some stuff to do. But yeah, just really sad for the guy. No more to be said, really, about that. Just an awful, awful, awful thing that's happened. Saquon Barkley, ankle sprain, looked quite... The replays looked pretty bad, but they've done testing. Looks like it's just sort of a standard ankle sprain. They expect him to be out about 3 weeks. Deontay Johnson was placed on injured reserve before the weekend's games. He's going to miss 4 weeks. Hamstring strain, that sort of thing. It's a killer in season, because as we're talking about with Joe Burrow, it's hard for this stuff to get resolved in season. Joe Burrow, as I just mentioned, aggravated calf strain. He's considered day-to-day, so just keep an eye on that. David Montgomery left the Lions game with a thigh injury and could miss a few weeks. Jamal Williams, as we mentioned, one of my picks last week, left the game in the second quarter and didn't return, hamstring injury. Alvin Kamara is back the week after next, so this next week it might be a bit of a Toby Jones Jr. Week, if you want to roll the dice on him. And then Jalen Waddle and Anthony Richardson both in concussion protocol. We know at this point what it's like with NFL concussion protocol. I would plan for both of those guys to miss this upcoming week. Mm-hmm. And then in a little bit of news, Cam Akers was a healthy scratch for the Rams, and the Rams are looking to trade him. Really strange situation. Apparently, there isn't any bad blood like there was last year, but this offense, this regime obviously doesn't really want Cam Akers with the team. They don't really feel like he's the running back moving forward, so better to deal him now and get something for him while he could still have a bit of a career ahead of him.
And judging from last year, that means he'll come in and win your fantasy leagues. Come back into the Rams team, that is.
Yes.
Because this exact thing happened last year.
Correct. It will do.
Yeah.
And just a quick one, springing off of that, I've just got a little few notes about dealing with big injuries, and Chubb, Barkley. I think there's a few things you need to do. Look at acquiring the backup, Nick Chubb. Look at Jerome Ford. He looked all right. And be savvy on the waiver wire. This is your time to sort of, if you're in leagues with fab, spend your fab on a guy who you think can get some work. Look at Jalen Warren. Look, he's been playing nice for the Steelers. Be quite savvy. You also can't be precious with your team. You have to be prepared to sacrifice aspects of your roster to rebalance that team. If you've got two amazing wide receivers, guess what? You probably need to trade one of them to get your running back steady again. Trade away your depth pieces. If you have a guy on your bench who you're like, I'm stashing him, he's going to be a sleeper, he's already really coming good, you need to trade these guys. You've got to trade away these depth pieces for a solid starting team. Be prepared to sacrifice and sort of get back with a starting team that can compete, because the worst thing to do is you lose a player like Nick Chubb and then you're stubborn and you're like, well, I'm just gonna let this part of my team do the heavy work for me, and then I'll plug in whoever else at running back. I'll plug in Damien Harris because he's the only other running back on my bench, and you're just failing.
Speaking of trades, let's quickly give the listeners someone each that we think you should target in a trade, who you should trade for, and someone that you should trade away from your team. Trade away, I'm going to go Justin Fields. Now, usually 2 weeks in, you're looking at people who are playing really well, and you think it might be a bit of a kind of mirage, or you don't expect them to keep it up all season, so you're capitalising on recent performances. Here with Justin Fields, I'm not capitalising on recent performances, I'm capitalising on name value, and I'm trying to get out while I can. The Bears look awful, Justin Fields looks like the worst part of the play. I'm getting out of Justin Fields ASAP. Sharples, who do you think people should trade away while they can?
Yeah, so this is the man I mentioned before. Might already be too late to trade him away. Dameon Pierce. It's not about him as a talent. Instead of a person. I don't know him as a person. He might be an idiot. But as a talent, he's unbelievable. But unfortunately, the game scripts are just not going to go his way this season. Houston look like they're going to be chasing every game they're in. Doesn't benefit Pierce because he's not going to get much work in the passing game. They've not been able to move that much towards the goal line. He's been getting about 13 carries so far, which it's not enough for him. He needs to be on 20. And so the situation is just not going to be there for him, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. They've got a bad team, they've got a rookie quarterback. So I would try, he went in the 5th round. A lot of people were optimistic on him. Maybe see if there's someone in the league who thinks there's value there. He's a young player. He could be exciting. He could go on a run. But right now he's on my team in the main league, and I would love it if someone would come in for an offer for him because I am worried.
Yeah. Well, let's hope none of them listen to this podcast.
I got to be honest though, Lou. I thought about that. I could lie. I could say, trade for him.
We're giving advice to the listeners as well. Lou, who are you trading away?
I'm trading away Puka Nacua. Now, put your pitchforks down for a second.
I've been holding it this whole time, though.
Yeah. That's because you've just been doing some gardening. But
okay.
Listen, like I was saying before, I think Puka Nacua is legit. I think he's a really talented player. But when Cooper Kupp comes back, Cooper Kupp is the number one wide receiver. I don't expect the same volume for Nacua. Now, obviously, I think that when Kupp comes back, I still think Nacua is going to be a good player. I think he can be a top 20 wide receiver. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying ship him before he's rubbish. All I am saying is, if you can trade him away and get AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, one of these true.
Never ever getting either of those players for this guy.
No. If you can package him up for one of these guys, if you can package him up with like a bit of a depth running back or something like that, and get a true alpha like Chase or AJ Brown, who have been really underwhelming, who have both barely scored over 10 points in a game this season. Go for it right now.
Yeah.
That's what you should do. Like I said, I'm not saying I wouldn't go out there and trade Nacua for, as we mentioned before, T. Higgins or something like that, because it's like, well, they might be on similar level.
Would. I'm just saying, just to show the kind of the nuances of it all, I probably would do that trade. I would quite easily trade away Nacua for T. Higgins.
Okay.
Personally.
Yeah. So,
Sharples, you want to do a tiebreaker on that?
Would I trade Nacua for T. Higgins? Yes, only because Cooper Kupp's going to come back.
Exactly.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
there we go.
Okay. I mean, I probably would as well, so that was a bad example.
Okay.
But yeah, so Nacua would be my trade away, cash in.
And I think we've got a bit of a theme here in terms of our trade fours. I think we've all got faith in the Bengals, because starting off, my trade for is Joe Burrow. Go out and get Joe Burrow if you can, if people are sick of him already, if people see him potentially miss this week, even if you have to stream a quarterback this week, because I think there's a lot of really good streaming options at quarterback this week. If you have to stream a quarterback this week and kind of take a week of Burrow injured, let's say if he actually does miss next week's game, I think it's still worth it. Go out and get Burrow. I think you might be able to get him for way cheaper than you could have done in the draft. Lou, do you want to say which Bengal you want people to trade for?
Chase, go and get Jamar Chase at a discount, please.
Yeah. What would you? Let's say, using the two names you had before, and I think this might be something that you could easily do, even though AJ Brown hasn't had an amazing start. Let's say it's someone like an AJ Brown. Let's say it's someone like, do you know, that tier of wide receiver who was drafted just the tier below the top three: Chase, Jefferson, Hill. The tier below, when you had
like Lamb,
Adams, Brown,
St. Brown.
Would you trade away any of those for Chase?
I would trade away. I absolutely adore CD Lamb. But if you're putting a gun at my head, I'm trading them all away for Jamar Chase, because I think Jamar Chase will be the best wide receiver in the league. So sorry. I don't know why I thought too much about that. Jamar Chase was my number one player on the season. I'm trading anyone away to get Jamar Chase.
Okay. Sharples?
Yeah, that was literally what I was about to say, so yeah, that's fine.
I know who's your trade for?
Another one, he's been talked about as well in the past few minutes. AJ Brown. Slow start, but saying that, week one he still had 15 points, 10 targets. It's just one bad week. But obviously he's down at the wide receiver 44. You know what I mean? You put a cheeky offer in there for someone who's, I don't know. For example, a Michael Pittman. He must be knocking around as a top 10, top 15. Someone just compares the two numbers. If you can somehow manage to sneak that, 100%. AJ Brown's a stud. He's gonna start scoring points. I think it's just been literally just a slow start. He's gonna be absolutely fine. He's a monster.
Yeah, take advantage of, maybe the ignorance of people in your league. They see the wide receiver 6, Nico Collins, on your team, and they have the wide receiver, whatever T. Higgins is, 34, probably worse than that. Go and trade them.
Exactly. Take advantage of the brain-dead players in your league.
Yeah.
So Sharples, Al, don't be surprised if you see some trade requests in your leagues.
Look forward to it.
Tomorrow morning.
Done, mate. Well done. Let's quickly bash through some waiver targets this week then. I mentioned the quarterbacks. I think I'm going to mention him again in a little bit, but I think Stafford is a really good target this week if you need to stream a quarterback. But also Devon A-Chain getting a bit involved. Raheem Mostert can't stay healthy, so it's worth kicking the tyres on A-Chain. And Musgrave, he looks like he's involved with this Green Bay team. You always need help at tight end. Check those three guys out. Lou?
Josh Reynolds, wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, 4.8% rostered. He's been a consistent target for Goff. Seems like the team's sort of like, cemented in wide receiver 2. Obviously, this past week amplified, 2 touchdowns. Not going to happen every single week, but 13 targets, 146 yards over 2 games. That's worth a waiver ad for me. It could be a really reliable wide receiver 3 off flex going forward. And Zach Moss, who is still available in 32.3% of leagues. 88 rushing yards, 1 touchdown this week, along with 4 catches for 19 yards through the air. Look like a solid starting running back, and if you can pick one of those up off the waiver wire, you're laughing.
Yeah. Sharples?
Yeah, back to the tight end. Obviously went great last time. This guy's not exactly a hidden gem. Hunter Henry, he's rostered in 34.7%, so he's on a fair few. But two great weeks for him: 16.6 points, 17.2. Obviously, you're not going to expect him to keep that rate up, or else he'll be challenging Travis Kelce. But even if you take those 2 touchdowns away, it's 10 plus points, which for a tight end, especially one that wasn't drafted, you can't really ask for much more than that. 6-7 targets both games, 50 plus yards. If he keeps doing that, even if the touchdowns don't stay there, you've got a solid tight end. Currently the tight end 2 as well, which shows you how bad that position is. And also, a bit of a gimme this one, you'd think. It's the backup running back from the Cleveland Browns, Jerome Ford. Obviously, Nick Chubb had his kneecap rotated 90 degrees the wrong way. He's not coming back. There's no one else really in that backfield. Jerome Ford came in, 16 carries, 106 yards, 24.1 points. See if you can keep it up. Might as well.
We're moving on to look at the plays for this week. In comes our man. You know what segment it is. It's the
Forget about it.
Players that are locked into your lineup that we're not going to mention in our play pick segment, but just put them in there. At the quarterback position, Hurts, Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar. Burrow if he plays. Lamar, Herbert.
Forget about it.
Running back, McCaffrey, Eckler, Henry, Pollard, Bijan, Etienne, Jacobs. Jones, if Jones is back.
Forget about it.
Wide receiver, Jefferson, Hill, Adams, Chase, Diggs. Ridley, stick with him. Amon-Ra if he plays. And Lamb.
Forget about it.
The amount of these players where it's just like asterisks if they play. And tight end, Kelce, Andrews, and Hawkinson.
Forget about it.
And that is it for tight ends. I don't care who did well last week. Tight end is potluck, apart from these 3 players, again, as I'm going to say every week. But let's get into some specific players who we think are going to have really good weeks. Let's get the tight ends out of the way first. Lou, start us off.
I'm going to go Sam Laporta, tight end for the Detroit Lions. 11 targets, 10 catches, over 100 receiving yards on the season already, averaging over 10 fantasy points, PPR fantasy points per game. Looks like a fairly reliable target for Jared Goff. I'd be happy to keep plugging him in, as it's hard to find consistency at the tight end position, but right now Laporta seems to be providing consistency, so I'm just going to keep plugging him in.
Yeah. Speaking of consistency, I'm going to go Dalton Schultz. Maybe not consistent fantasy production, but he had 7 targets this past week. So try him out. Sharples?
Yeah, I've gone for the same guy I told you to pick him off the waivers, Hunter Henry. Not much more to say. Back-to-back games, 16, 17 points. Coming up against the Jets, I don't see any reason why we can't see the same 6-7 targets, even go and get another touchdown. Projected 8.3 points.
Okay. Lou, give us a running back.
I'm going to go Kenneth Walker this week. I think he's the clear number one back over Charbonnet, over Carbonnet. Listen, even in the red zone as well. Even in the red zone, Walker's been dominating the touches on the ground, through the air as well. He just had a really nice game against Detroit with 2 rushing touchdowns. His yards per carry wasn't the best, 2.5 on the ground, but I expect his rushing yards to soar this week as he plays a Panthers team that I just targeted last week with my running back pick, who I know Jamal Williams got injured, but they still give away 2 touchdowns to Tony Jones Jr. The Panthers have given up 132 rushing yards per game and have already allowed 4 rushing touchdowns on the season. Seahawks are at home. The Panthers are going to be are currently one of the poorest teams in the league. The game script could allow for Walker to have a bit of a field day in this game, so I'd be starting him confidently.
And I'll see you on the other side of the ball, Lou. I'm going to go Miles Sanders, my running back start of the week, just because he's the number one, clear number one here. Is the dude for this team at running back, and that's what I'm chasing. I'm chasing opportunity again. That's what we love to chase more than anything. That carries and targets. That's our bread and butter when we're talking about fantasy football and players who you should be looking at starting. You're never going to be picking Miles Sanders based on talent, basically, but he's in there. And, he's seen at least 5 targets a game, coupled with about 16 carries. That's more than enough opportunity to rack up some decent fantasy points. So who's he against? We know who he's against. It's the Seahawks. I think this is an opportunity for Carolina to possibly put up some points, even though I'm a bit miffed still about Bryce Young. I didn't see him play too much in college, and everything he does looks super lethargic. I do think Carolina, as I said, are going to score some points. Seattle, I think, are going to win or play in a lot of games like they have done the previous few weeks. Miles Sanders, chase that opportunity. Sharples?
Yeah, I've gone for a guy I was already gushing about earlier on, but Kyron Williams, running back for the Rams. Sky high projection at 18, considering that it's only week 2 and he was completely undrafted. I think he's got the 5th highest projection of any running back, which is pretty mad. But totally warranted. I mean, if you watched the San Francisco game last week and he was against me in fantasy, he was just terrifying. He was like the Terminator. He was just coming back every time. Didn't matter if it was a run, didn't matter if it was a pass. He just seemed to touch the ball on every play. Obviously, he got himself a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown, which is always going to help and inflate the numbers. But just with that much work, and you don't see any reason why he wouldn't keep getting that work. He's going to be there or thereabouts. And so, although it's a high projection, I think he's more than capable of beating it. Against the Bengals, we're still not quite sure what we're going to get for the Bengals. Is the offense going to wake up? Is it not? Even so, there should be scope to score some points. But like I said, he looks to be game script proof. So whether the Rams are absolutely smashing him or whether they're miles behind or whether it's close, he will get the ball. And so, that's why I've gone for Kyron Williams this week.
Nice. Let's do quarterback. Lou?
I'm going to go Kirk Cousins, who is the quarterback 1 through week 2.
Of course he is.
Which I sort of really didn't clock onto because Minnesota are obviously 0-2. Cousins has been very turnover prone in the first 2 games. He's got 1 interception, 3 fumbles to his name. So it's easy to overlook that he's been solid for fantasy football and he's thrown 6 touchdown passes already this season. This week, he's at home, not in prime time, in a must-win game for the Vikings and the team that they're against in the Chargers. The Chargers, who have given up over 350 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns per game to opposing quarterbacks. So they're a great matchup for the position. When you have the weapons that Cousins has, Jefferson, Addison, Osborne, Hawkinson, along with a bit of a stuttering running game that they have, it becomes an easy plug and play, which I would be doing confidently this week in a game that is a must-win. I know we say this all the time, but shootout worthy. These are the games that you want players in.
Yeah. I'm going to go Matt Stafford. I alluded to it earlier. Only projected the 15.7 points. Everything has been there so far this season for Stafford, apart from touchdowns. He's thrown over 300 yards in both games so far, and I think we can all agree that the Rams' offense is way better than everyone expected. Everyone but me, that is. So far, he's only thrown 1 touchdown, which is unusual. Stafford averages about 1.7 touchdowns per game for his career, so you expect some positive regression there. He gets a favourable matchup against the Bengals. I think the Rams are going to really fancy themselves in this game, Joe Burrow playing or not. I think it's a sneaky good game. Annoying that it's on Monday night, one of 2 Monday night games again, so we're probably not really going to be able to see it live. But yeah, I think we expect some positive regression, a couple of touchdown passes at least from Stafford, in a nice game, I think. Sharples?
Well, I don't love the matchup, but I like Jordan Love this week. Projected 14.1 points against the New Orleans Saints. Tough defense, we know that, but 3 touchdowns in each of his last 2 games. Yardage has been a little bit inconsistent, but I don't need 3 touchdowns from him. He's only got projection of 14. If he gets a couple of touchdowns, 200 yards, more than enough. So more playing the points game on this one. But yeah, 6 touchdowns in 2 games is not to be sniffed at. Maybe the Packers have done it again. Maybe they are going to go from Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers to another unbelievable quarterback. Let's just see. Personally, I don't care as long as he does good this week.
Just quickly on Jordan Love, did you know that he's thrown 6 touchdowns in 2 games?
Zing!
Very good, very good. Wide receiver, Lee.
I'm going to go Amari Cooper, wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns. Despite being doubtful to play in the Monday night game, he ended up coming out of the night leading the team in targets, receptions, receiving yards, pretty much every notable passing category. Clearly Deshaun Watson's number 1 target, and he looked great. If you saw some of the games, some of the catches that Cooper made were great. He looked, I don't even, like, he didn't even look hampered at all. Now, obviously, Nick Chubb is out. You'd figure that the Browns' offense is got to lean on the passing game more, as that is now where the main playmakers are, Cooper being the central piece of that. This week he gets to face a Titans defense that has given up over 238 yards and 52 fantasy points per game to wide receivers in the opening 2 weeks of the season. I think it's going to be a close game. 2 teams who can, I can't really make either of them out at the minute, the Browns and the Titans. So I'm very intrigued, and I am also confident that Cooper can get plenty of work in a game that can be, it's going to be quite unpredictable, I think.
I'm going to go George Pickens. Speak about a guy that is an absolute dude. 127 yards and a touchdown last night off just the 4 receptions, even though he had 10 targets.
Yeah.
Go on.
Not great that he had 10 targets and only caught 4 of them. I think that speaks a lot to the quarterback play.
Yeah. I think we're expecting or hoping Kenny Pickett gets, more comfortable, better. They were against Cleveland, and, you can blame injury all you want, but Cleveland just completely shut down Joe Burrow in week 1. That's not going to be the case in week 3 against Vegas. It's a super favourable matchup for Pickens against this kind of really not intimidating Vegas secondary. And yeah, he's the only guy there really to throw the ball to because you've got Frymouth underneath, but I mean, unfortunately Deontay Johnson on the IR, so he's going to get peppered with targets. He's super talented as was confirmed this past week. If anyone didn't realise how talented George Pickens was, just go and watch his touchdown from this week. I think there's not many more safe plays this week at wide receiver if we're talking about these kind of middling kind of wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 guys than George Pickens, to be honest with you, with some serious upside. So Pickens this week, Sharples.
Mike Evans is being disrespected with a 14.6 projection, and so I'm going to absolutely attack that.
I agree. I
just think it's ridiculous. Obviously, he's had 2 touchdowns in the last 2 matches, which Mike Evans doesn't always do, but just for the amount he's getting targeted, the yardage. Obviously, Philadelphia are a good team, but I think they'll probably be chasing that game. I think there'll be plenty of throws. Obviously, Chris Godwin's due a big game, but I think there's enough of the ball to go around. And yeah, I'm just attacking that projection, which I think is daft. 14.6 points. Should easily beat that. Mike Evans against the Eagles at wide receiver for me.
Very good, very good. Let's move on and quickly look at some games this week. Sharples, have you got a tier list of games for us? I've already said it, but immediately I'm annoyed that there's 2 Monday night games. It just means there's less games for us to watch on Sunday night, really. Mm-hmm. But have you got a tier list for us?
Yeah, and let me just preface this. I put these together today. I've had quite a long day. Fantasy didn't go well for me last week, so I'm in a bit of a bad mood. So we've only got 2 in great and 2 in good, a lot in meh, and 3 in bad. So it might just be me being disillusioned, or maybe they are all this bad. So, as usual, we'll start with the bad. Jags Texans, Brown Titans, Ravens Colts, Raiders Steelers.
I bet the Browns Texans has a lot of points scored, but I bet it's not really relevant for fantasy, is what I would say about those. Browns Titans, I apologise, yeah. It's just not an attractive game, is it? Like when you look at it. But
no.
Yeah.
The notch up, but still meh. Got quite a few in this one. Some you might disagree with, but it's just how I'm feeling this week. Lions, Falcons, Saints, Packers, Commanders, Bills, Jets, Patriots, Seahawks, Panthers, Chiefs, Bears, Buccaneers, Eagles. Might move that one up to good, actually, on hindsight, but still.
I would move the Lions, Falcons up as well.
I don't like the Falcons this year. I think they're a mirage. I think
Why? Because they're 2-0, mate. Because they're 2-0 and they're winning.
I think Bijan's good. I don't like Desmond Ridder. That he's not looking very good.
Yeah,
I think they'll soon start to crumble.
Yes.
And Jets Patriots again. Completely lost all interest in any Jets games now that Aaron Rodgers is gone. But into the good.
What was in the good?
Into the good. 49ers Giants. Giants actually showed a little sign of life. So I'm hoping that was going to be interesting. And another team that also showed some life. Dolphins Broncos. Let's just see. I was feeling optimistic on this one. I was trying to not put everything in the meh category. Let's see.
I think the 49ers Giants could very easily go the way of the Cowboys Giants from week 1.
Yeah.
Maybe.
We'll see.
And two which I'm hoping will be the 2 shining jewels on the crown. Vikings Chargers. Bengals Rams, because the Bengals are going to be back this week.
What's funny about that is that in those 2 games which I agree, they're my favourite games this weekend as well. Out of those 4 teams, there's 1 win.
That is, wow.
On the season, but it is interesting. No, because they will be my 2 favourite games. So it is interesting how it's like how how we've sort of framed it in that we're still excited about these teams, even though they've not been the best.
I could see the Buccaneers putting up a real fight against the Eagles personally, so I think that's one to look out for. And just met Buccaneers again, like all the teams who played the Eagles so far this season, they could make life pretty hard for them to score points, to be honest with you. But yeah, but lads, instead of closing thoughts, we're going to retire that for this week because
we are going to close the show with first email. The first email question that we have. If you want to get in touch, in the pocket across the pond at gmail.com. Ask us anything, fantasy advice. Do you think we're idiots? Tell us.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the biggest idiot?
Is that you? But do you want them to email in and say you as well?
No, it's you, mate.
We got an email from Rob Melia.
Rob. We know Rob.
It's cheating, really.
It's cheating.
We asked somebody to email us. It should be the name of this segment.
Who did
we ask to email us this week?
No, Rob's in a few leagues. Good fantasy player.
The email is titled Bryce Young Q. Q, in this context, I assume, is short for question. The email reads as follows. The Panthers traded...
Panthers fan, by the way.
Yes, the Panthers traded the farm to move up for Bryce Young, and after 2 games, the play calling looks awful, and next to none of the receivers can get any separation. It's looking like it's going to be a long season for the Panthers and for Young, and maybe beyond, with no first-round pick this year. As early as it is to call, as we're only 2 games into the season. Do you think the Panthers could regret surrendering the franchise quarterback with a lack of downfield options, a lack of a true wide receiver, and lack of future options?
It's... For us, I think the reference is like Sam Darnold. The reference would be, in terms of a player that kind of gets given the keys to essentially a car that doesn't work, and it kind of ruins them for at least a few years, if not the whole career.
Yeah.
That kind of lack of development. So I definitely think there's a cause for concern in terms of like the guy's confidence being shot, his development being halted because the team just isn't there at the minute. I would also say that I, again, not seen much of him playing in college. Undoubtedly an amazing college player. I'm not seeing much from him to say he's going to be an amazing NFL player.
I know, I agree. This is what I don't... It's what I have a bit of a pet peeve when teams draft guys and like they feel the need to shove them in right away. Like we've seen this year, Stroud, Richardson, Young, all starting straight away. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with... Patrick Mahomes sat for a year.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years. Jordan Love, who we've just been talking about looking really good, sat for 3 years. I know that isn't always a recipe for success and always the way to go, but with some quarterbacks it might be. With Bryce Young, they have Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton is a he has been a very solid, serviceable NFL quarterback. Why not have your... very sort of inexperienced, very, physically fragile young quarterback sit behind somebody and learn from him for a year instead of thinking like, right, let's put this guy in, let's completely get him killed.
I don't know. Maybe it's coming from someone who's never played, but I don't know how much you learn from getting, like you said,
getting your head kicked in
every week. What I mean? There's an aspect of it being a different speed, and you need to get up to that speed. But I don't know what you learn by just losing every week and not having anyone to throw the ball to. Sharples.
Yeah, no, I think I'd have to sort of echo just what Lou said. I mean, he shouldn't have to be in this position where he's coming straight in and is expected to be the saviour. I think that's just a symptom of where the league's going. I mean, the amount of early round picks in the past that sort of, like we said, sat for a year. Rodgers sat for a couple of years under Brett Favre. Brady didn't come in to start. Obviously, they were a late round pick, not a number 1 pick. But it's just, he's coming into a team that's a little bit of a shambles. He's not the only one. I think similar story in Houston. And it's going to take time. I mean, he's not been great, but he's a rookie quarterback that's played 2 games in a not very good team. I wouldn't hit the panic button now. He still might be something. It's just, I mean, it would be nice to get some weapons around him. But it's a tough one. I mean, they've been in dire straits for a little bit. I mean, obviously they had arguably the best player in the league at some point, Christian McCaffrey, there, and he left because they couldn't do anything with him. So they definitely need a bit of a reshuffle. I wouldn't just completely blow it up right now. Let's just see. It's been 2 games. He looks okay. He looks fine. And going back to the email, yes, it would be nice to have downfield talent. It would be nice to have all that stuff. But the fact is, not every team can have that. Like, all the teams want those things. You have to pick and choose your battles. They've got some reasonably good defensive pieces. They've obviously not invested in the offense. It's not going to be a nice one, but I wouldn't hit the panic button, and I wouldn't rule out Bryce Young as a quarterback just off 2 bad games.
Yeah, to be honest, I think in terms of talent, I think Adam Thielen could potentially still do a job. I think Terrence Marshall could be a capable real-life NFL wide receiver, and Jonathan Mingle's got potential to do something for fantasy. So I think where Rob kind of hit the nail on the head there, is probably looking at the awful play calling, to be honest. But yeah.
Thank you very much for the email.
Cheers, Rob. Thanks for that. And that's going to do us for this week. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for listening.
Good luck.
Yeah, if you like what you listen to, be sure share us about with your friends who you play fantasy football with. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Samsung Podcasts. Yeah. That's probably a thing.
I suppose it's something that
BlackBerry Podcasts.
I suppose it's something that we don't normally say much anymore because we're just like in the swing of it. But yeah, it's just, we wanted to start this as kind of just 3 guys who are obsessed with fantasy football and happen to be from the UK, and we know a lot of people in the UK do play fantasy football, and you might want some super expertise from some great kind of American fantasy football podcasts who've been playing for years and years, or you might want someone a bit like kind of close to your experience so far, who's been playing for a few years and is super into it and is coming at it kind of from a different perspective, being from the UK. So share us to your friends if you do enjoy us, yeah. But thank you very much as always for listening, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
See ya.
Did you know that Jared Goff's interception streak's over?